All right, on to today's show. This is a very exciting topic, the difference between house cleaning and cleaning for your short-term rentals. And we could not be more blessed to have with us today an expert who is known all over the Airbnb or vacation rental industry by his podcasts and his books. This is a guy that really knows what he's talking about, and he helps homeowners get paid for their pad. Please help me welcome the author of the book and the podcast host of Get Paid for Your Pad, Jasper Ribbers.
Yeah, so my name is Jasper Ribbers. Back in the day, I had an apartment in Amsterdam, and I was looking for a solution. I didn't like the long-term renting model. And so I tried Airbnb. It took off. It was a giant success. And over the years, I've started helping first friends and then other people to get better results with their Airbnb listings and other short-term rental listings through my book, podcast, and blog, which is called Get Paid for Your Pad.
Well, I'm so excited that you joined us today because you've got a phenomenal podcast and a phenomenal book, and you are just a trailblazer when it comes to the Airbnb space. And from the house cleaning perspective, we're always trying to figure out ways that we can better work with our Airbnb hosts. And so I'm hoping you can give us some insight on that.
Absolutely. The most important thing to realize is that an Airbnb or short-term rental cleaning is very different from your home cleaning. That's because it's part of hospitality, right? And so in hospitality, a clean space is one of the most important things that people are looking for when they're traveling. And I think the most important thing to remember is that the one thing that people don't want to be remembered of is that somebody else was just using the apartment, the same day or a couple of days before, right? And so because that can really kind of ruin the experience. Just finding like one little hair in the bed, for example, can completely ruin the experience for people because they immediately are remembered that somebody else was using the bed and they start visualizing what was going on, and that can completely ruin it, right? But also, things like cleaning out the fridge, not leaving, half open bottles, and even like, toilet rolls, just always replacing the toilet rolls. And if you really want to go the extra mile, like putting a little sticker on them, which is something that we can learn from the hotel industry. For example, putting one of those paper ribbons on the toilet seat, right? Which is actually something I just arrived at my own apartment here in Cali in Colombia, and which is managed by a property management company. And when I walked in, there's no trace of anybody having been here before. Everything was completely set up as it was a brand new apartment, including that toilet ribbon, including, the little shampoo bottles that were not half empty, the towels, like everything, the whole setup. There was no trace of anybody else being here in past, which is that's what you're striving for.
I'm glad you brought that up because I know that sometimes hosts do go stay at their own properties. And as a result of that, they are looking at it from a different perspective, even from the guest, because they're the ones that are paying for the cleaning. Is there anything that you prefer or that you have preferences for that house cleaners do that are above and beyond just regular cleaning?
Really making sure that there's no trace of any past guests. And then the second thing is what really helps is if the cleaner really thinks about who is coming, right? Because essentially what you're doing when you're cleaning a space, it's not really cleaning a space, it's more like turning it over. You're turning it over to receive a specific group of guests, right? And that group of guests, they have different needs depending on the composition of the group, depending on where they're coming from. And so what really helps if the cleaner kind of thinks along those lines and thinks about like, okay, who are these people that are coming and what can we provide for them? So for example, if there's a small child in the group, for example, so it's really like thinking ahead and thinking along with the host that is really helpful for us as hosts.
That's really interesting. I don't think a lot of house cleaners have actually gone that far as to think ahead. Because if you do have a small child, you would be thinking about things like high chairs, for example. I think that's an excellent tip. When guests leave, is there anything specific that you would recommend house cleaners do that is above and beyond just regular cleaning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing when the guests leave is that the cleaners, that they check for any damages. Because if there are damages, then the host only has a limited amount of time to either claim part of the security deposit or contact Airbnb. And so oftentimes when it's not spotted in time, then the host loses the opportunity to recover those damages. So that's number one, really like inspecting the place and also taking stock of the inventory, just making sure that nothing's gone. Sometimes guests by accident will take something with them. So I think taking inventory and making sure that everything's still there. And then if it's not, just either notifying the host or, in the perfect world, even taking initiative and just replacing it. Right. So I was very, very blessed to have a cleaning person in my apartment, a lady that I'd known for a very long time. And she really took care of all those little things, right? So I never had to really worry about my apartment as I was traveling and managing it remotely. I could just trust that she wasn't just cleaning, she was also, buying like some flowers to put on the table or buying a plant or anything that needed to be replaced, even a light bulb or something. She would just do it and then she would just send me the receipts and then I would just add that to her payment. Sometimes I would pay her a little bonus as well because I appreciated it so much. The cleaner is really an essential, really, really essential person in the whole management of the short-term rental unit. And so I think when cleaners really go above and beyond and provide extra value to the hosts, I think the hosts will really appreciate that and they will reward the cleaners typically. At least that's always what I preach to my hosts. I always tell them like, hey, your cleaning person is probably the most important person in your business. And so you should really, appreciate that person and give them extra responsibility and motivation to not just clean, but really think as part of the team, think as part of the team managing the home, right? And in the end of the day, of course, the success of the host is also the success of the cleaning person.
Well, let me ask a question about that because I know that there are a lot of house cleaners that are insistent on having contracts. So if they were going to go above and beyond, should they put that inside their contract with the Airbnb host? Or is that just one of those teamwork kind of things where you just expect that they're going to go above and beyond and the host is going to go above and beyond and you're both going to work together to build this business together? Or should you have that all spelled out that if you have a light bulb burned out, I'll replace it, I'll send you the receipt, and it's all in writing so that there are no surprises?
I would say it's definitely a good thing to have everything written out so that the expectations are aligned. When you're cleaning somebody's house and you're like an hour late, it doesn't necessarily affect the situation of the owner. But with short-term rentals, this is really, really important, right? Because oftentimes there's like a daily, like a back-to-back check-out and check-in. And so, the guests will leave at 11 a.m., but then the next guests are arriving at 3 p.m., right? And so if you're late, that really affects that experience if the apartment isn't ready in time, that can really affect the business. And so that's one more thing that I think it's good for cleaners to keep that in mind.
Tell our listeners where they can go to find your podcast and your books and your training courses and your consulting and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can go to getpaidforyourpad.com. I've published over 300 podcasts that people can listen to entirely for free. And we also have an online coaching program for people who want to get into property management, which is called the STR Profit Academy.
Alrighty, and that is Jasper Ribbers from Get Paid for Your Pad. He's brilliant and he's got a bunch of courses and a bunch of stuff that can help you if you're thinking about branching out and going out into the space where you're going to rent out an extra room of your house. I know, super exciting. I'm going to leave links in the show notes so that you can find everything there is to know about him, his podcast, and his books.